Hi, my name is Rebecca. I am doing my final project on a dramaturgical perspective of Tolkien's The Two Towers. So basically, what dramaturgy is what I'm majoring in over in the drama department. Um, Dramaturgy is basically, in simple terms, analyzing scripts and doing research. Um, but more specifically, I study scripts. So I look at the world that the script takes place in. I analyze the characters, the setting, the society that the characters live in, etc., etc., and I combine that with research that I do on my own, or the research that the director asked me to do, or the designers for a show. For instance, for those of you who might have seen She Kills Monsters last fall, I was a dramaturg for that production, and it's a play that takes place in the 90s, so I had to do a lot of 90s research, like pop culture and societal things that were going on in the government during the 90s. I also did a lot of research on Dungeons and Dragons and feminist culture in the 90s, gay culture in the 90s, stuff like that. Anything that could pertain to the play, the production itself, as well as to the director's concept. So I have this definition that I really like to use when people ask me what dramaturgy is, because it's a very specific branch off of drama, because it combines English and drama together. So, like Dr. Boynton was saying in his lecture, that you have English majors have a tendency to view literature as almost performative, or they have a certain way of analyzing literature, whereas performance people don't analyze literature as much as they do the performance. So it's like kind of in the sense, like, my English brain wants to analyze a script the way I would analyze a piece of literature, but I can't do that because scripts are meant to be performed, whereas literature is meant to be read. Um, but anyway, so what I usually tell people when they ask me what a dramaturg is and what I do, I say that the dramaturg is kind of like the big brain that is responsible for making sure that the final product of the production is conducive to both the director's concept and the playwright's intent. So my job is basically to connect the playwright to the directors and the designers, and then to the actors, and then to the audience. So therefore, I'm kind of the center of the production. I'm kind of like the go-to of, like, how do we get this across, or how do we do this, or, like, can you give me some feedback on this, stuff like that. Another example with She Kills Monsters is with the sound design. They had certain sound cues in there that were from actual radio broadcasts and television casts from the 90s that were brought into the production because it made the audience feel like they were actually in the 90s again. So it put them into the world of the play, which made them connect with it more and made the message that we were trying to get across land more successfully. Um, Another definition that I like to say that dramaturgs are is that we're the artist who helps the director and other artists to shape the sociological, textual, directorial, acting, and design values that are used for a production. So once again, just reiterating that all the research that I do, all the analysis that I do of the script is put into the designer's choices, to the director's choices, to actors' choices, stuff like that. So I'm basically the big brain. I know minute details about someone from the 90s. Like, for instance, I know that in Dungeons and Dragons, I know the difference between all the classes. I know the difference between all the races. I know that the 4th edition of Dungeons and Dragons that was released in the early 2000s was not as liked as the 5th edition, because the 4th edition was very very restrictive in its gameplay. See, I know little facts like that, and that's kind of what my job in the theater is to do. So what I decided to do for my final project is take my dramaturgical perspective and apply it to one of Tolkien's books. Doing this for the entire series was a little bit daunting, so I didn't do that, especially with the time constraint that we have for this class. So I chose the Two Towers specifically because it's the middle book, and I thought that it had a lot of key points and elements that a play should have. And when we're looking, I didn't want to like dramaturg it because again, that dramaturging takes months, if not longer, to prepare and actually do. So I kind of just put together a presentation on how I would go about dramaturging a stage adaptation of the Two Towers. So I'll be kind of like analyzing how I would help a playwright to write that stage adaptation and how I as a dramaturg would approach it. So when it comes to writing a play that would kind of adapt to the stage of the Two Towers, the points that you really want to identify in a play is you need an inciting incident, a climax, and a denouement, or falling action, something that like concludes the piece. And doing that for a book, one of Tolkien's books that's kind of like the middle book, is kind of hard. But I've kind of tweaked it a little bit to where we're getting those major parts in there and still getting a message from it. So when I was looking at the overall book as a whole, I noticed this recurring theme of hope, and that's throughout all of Tolkien's Lord of the Rings series and The Hobbit. Is this underlying theme that no matter what happens, no matter what darkness we come across, there's always going to be a light to guide us. There's always going to be this hope that we're going to succeed in what we're trying to do. So I try to emulate that as much as possible. What I want to go over is like key points that the playwright that I'm working with needs to include in the play, and how they include that is up to them. My job is basically to kind of be a sounding board for the playwright, so where I help them with their structure, I help them with their making sure that their message is as clear and succinct as possible in their writing. So the first instance that we have in the Two Towers that needs to be in there is the death of Boromir. It is a moment where Merry and Pippin are captured, Frodo and Sam go off on their own, and then Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas have to go after Merry and Pippin. So it's a key part that kind of launches us into this part of our journey. The next part that is really important, and again, this is up to the playwright on how to get us to these moments. Whether they want to stay true to the book, if they want to cut things out, stuff like that, that is up to the playwright. And also, legalities and copyright issues. The next moment is Pippin and Merry's escape, where they meet Treebeard and the Ent people who agree to fight against Saruman. That is a very poignant part because these Ent people have been dormant for years, if not centuries, and so it's a moment where the Ent people are like, we have this opportunity to defeat the man and the people responsible for killing over half of our race. It's very important to the plot as far as helping the other people defeat Saruman and eventually the orcs and Sauron and all of them. Next, another key important part is when they find out that Gandalf is still alive. He takes the three, I like to call them the three, which is Gimli, Legolas, and Aragorn, to the city of Edoras to speak with Theoden, where they convince him to fight against Saruman. And this is another moment where we can see that that little underlying theme of hope. they like try to convince him to like, yes, this is something that we need to do because you need to fight against the people who want to harm your people. You need to realize that you're not starting a war, you're defending your home. Um, and that leads us to Helm's Deep, the Battle of Helm's Deep. Gandalf brings the troop of Erkenbrand to Helm's Deep to fight against the orcs and Saruman and all of them, and they win. This is important because of Aragorn and Theoden's involvement in the battle. So in the book, they actually, I'm trying to remember, they actually ride around Helm's Deep, helping where they can and instilling hope and inspiration in their people to help them keep fighting, giving them a purpose to keep fighting. And this is a key moment because this kind of is what wins them the battle. That and, Gandalf bringing reinforcements, it kind of wins them the battle because they're given that strength and that hope to keep fighting for what they believe in, for their own people, for their right to live without the threat of, orcs and like being usurped and overran. And there's a quote that I really liked. Let me see if I can find it. Yes. Nonetheless, day will bring hope to me. It is not said that no foe has ever taken the Hornburg, if men defended it. So the minstrels say, said Eomer. Then let us defend it and hope. And I highlighted that quote because I really think that it is necessary when the playwright is addressing this adaptation, because it is one of those key moments that flat out says, hey, we need to do this. We need to hope. We need to be able to look forward to our end goal, because if we lose sight of our end goal, we're never going to reach it. So I thought that was very necessary to include. The next, I lost my place again. The next important, actually, this is the point where I would actually recommend the playwright to end Act 1 and begin Act 2, because this is where the Two Towers are separated into Book 3 and Book 4. And it's a really good place to do this because now we jump into Frodo and Sam's point of view of things. So the next important part that I thought that the playwright should definitely include is Frodo and Sam's traveling through the rocks of Emyn Muil. They capture Smeagol and then rope him into helping them out. So this is an important part because it jumps us back into the play, into the world of the play, and it shows us, okay, Sam and Frodo are struggling, but they might have found a way to actually make it to Mount Doom. And this gets that little bit of hope kicking again. So Frodo and Sam travel through the dead marshes, and they find these bright lights that Smeagol calls candles of corpses. And I found this interesting because it reminded me of the Dumbledore quote from Harry Potter. Happiness can be found in even the darkest of times if one only remembers to turn on the light. And it's this light in these dead marshes, these dark marshes, this place where it seems like all hope is lost and that everything is futile and there's no point in continuing. That they find these lights, and it is kind of symbolic in the fact that even in this place of futility and darkness, that there is still these lights, these emblems of hope that can guide you through it. And I think that this would actually be a really good part for the set designer. I think actually a set designer would love to design this because of those lights, because I get really excited when like the set and the light and the sound all come in together to have their own little nuances in a play, because it's their way of like contributing their opinion, contributing their perspective into a piece. And I think that this part would actually really excite a set designer because It's their chance to contribute their little piece of hope to the overall production. The next important thing is Sam and Frodo meeting Faramir, and then traveling with him to Hinith um, and basically conversing with Faramir, catching each other up on everything that's been happening that Sam and Frodo aren't aware of. And then, of course, Faramir warning Frodo about Gollum, and then the Sam and Frodo leaving Faramir and making it to Minas Morgul. These are important to the plot, not necessarily to the hope that we're trying to instill in the production, but like the plot is something that we can't forget. And then, of course, Shelob's lair. This is another crucial part because Sam and Frodo are betrayed by Gollum. And so Frodo is captured by the spider and then stung in the back of the neck and made to believe that he is dead, when actually he is paralyzed. And in this moment, Sam stabs Shelob and uses Galadriel's jewel that she gave to Frodo back in Rivendell. Um, she uses that to, Sam uses that to defeat Shelob and drive her back into her little dark holes. And this is, again, that light and slash hope reference that we're seeing again, and it's that motif that we keep seeing throughout the production. And I wanted to highlight those key parts, everything that I saw with like a light reference or a hope reference or something like that, something that's shown something bright in a place of darkness. I wanted to highlight that because when you're doing a production, you have the director's concept, which is like the overall message the director wants to get across. Like for She Kills Monsters, it was diversity and acceptance. For this, it would be hope and light. And so highlighting those moments is very important, not only in directing a piece or producing a piece, but in writing a piece, because the writer has something that they want to say. And then finally, Frodo appears to be dead, but is paralyzed, and then he's captured by orcs. And this is that kind of denouement, like you've had Helm's Deep, which is kind of your climax, but in actuality, Shelob's Lair is kind of the ultimate climax because your main character might be dead. He's definitely captured, so you don't know what his fate is. And you have the denouement of Sam realizing, okay, I gotta save him. There's nobody else here to do it, and Frodo's not dead. It's my responsibility. So you kind of have that cliffhanger in a sense that makes you want to come back and see the next one. So that's kind of where I left off in reference to like how I would go about dramaturging this piece. Like I said, I would be helping out the playwright with writing the piece as well as doing the research necessary. For instance, reading Tolkien's letters, reading all of his history on Middle Earth, so the Silmarillion, reading the books, stuff like that, making sure that I'm basically a Tolkien expert, as well as becoming an expert on the world that Tolkien lived in. So knowing about World War I and World War II and how the society was when he was writing these books is very important to doing an adaptation or really any play, like any play that you set your world in. You need to, like we said in the discussion on fairies, you have to be true to the laws of your world. And if you don't know what those laws are, you can't really set up a world. And so it's my job as a dramaturg to know the laws of that world, how it runs, how the people in it live, and what makes them tick. It's my job as a dramaturg to know that. And so when it comes to dramaturging and doing research for a stage adaptation of The Two Towers, these lectures that we've had over the semester were extremely important. As a dramaturg, I would have taken advantage of those so, like, even more so than I already did. I honestly probably would have been the one arranging them with the actors. so that my actors had those insights into Tolkien's world. But overall, yeah, that's how I would tackle an adaptation of Tolkien's Two Towers. It is a really daunting task, but I attempted it as best as I could. Um, so yeah, dramaturging is an interesting field, and it's definitely not for those who don't love what they do. Um, I think that Tolkien did a great job in writing his book, and that a stage adaptation would be pretty awesome. We already know that the musical is pretty good, a little bit expensive, but it's pretty good. So I think that in the end, it would make an amazing stage adaptation. Thank you very much.